Welcome to PatsCast. The Pads finally come on. The Patriots, they had to wait 5 practices before they are able to put on pads according to NFL rules. So Monday was the very first real practice for the team. Things get real. We get to learn about the offensive line, see how Maye performs in real football action, look at the rookies a little bit. But the big story coming out of the first day of training camp of real physical football, wearing pads, is Christian Gonzalez is hurt. Yes, Christian Gonzalez is hurt already. Second play of 11-on-11s, Gonzo limped off, grabbing the back of his left leg. He was covering Stephon Diggs. Again, they had just started 11-on-11s, just had completed one-on-ones before that. I'm no expert, but it looks to be a hamstring injury from what you see. Go look up the video on X. He was able to walk off the field very gingerly, I might add, but if it is indeed a hamstring injury, it means he could be back tomorrow or potentially miss the rest of the season. Anywhere in that range, if that comforts you, the fan, at all. But not a great start with Christian Gonzalez limping off the field, and we hope he's back out there sooner rather than later. Obviously, Gonzalez is the best player on the team by leaps and bounds. You know, maybe that could be Stephon Diggs if he is in prime form when the season starts, or Christian Barmore could be that guy, or potentially Maye down the road with his high ceiling. But I think it's pretty clear Christian Gonzalez is the biggest difference maker out there, outside of course, the quarterback position, which impacts everything. Patriots do have some depth at the defensive back positions, but the other major concern with this Christian Gonzalez injury is cornerback Carlton Davis is still not practicing. I'm not sure what's going on with his injury issues. Of course, the Patriots acquired Carlton Davis in free agency, and if those two are out there as starters, I think that's the best duo at corner in the NFL. I think Gonzo is a top 3 NFL corner. I really do, at least top 5. And Davis is top 10, at least top 15. Jamar Chase says he's the hardest corner he's gone against. If Gonzalez misses an extended period of time and this Davis injury lingers, we're looking at probably the strongest unit on this roster becoming one of the weakest. So who's out there now that you don't have Christian Gonzalez and you still don't have Carlton Davis lining up opposite him? You have Alex Austin, who looked really great in the second half of last season. I'm really excited about him, but he's essentially your number 1 corner with those two guys out. Marcus Jones, of course, a bit undersized, but quick, speedy. He's still out there. And then Marcellus Dial, last year was a rookie, slowly working his way up. I am encouraged by Marcellus Dial, but we just haven't seen enough. But those are your 3 starters if you don't have Christian Gonzalez and you don't have Carlton Davis out there. No Jonathan Jones this year. He went elsewhere. When it's Gonzalez, Davis, and Alex Austin, or Gonzalez, Davis, and Marcus Jones, you feel pretty good about it, right? But when you have Austin and Jones on the outside and then Marcellus Dial covering the slot, suddenly you're going from the best corner duo to one of the worst in the league. So hopefully this is a nothing injury, a nothing burger, and Gonzalez is back out there this week. But with hamstring injuries, you never know with these things. It could be a few days, it could be a few weeks, it could be a few months. Again, I don't think it's been officially reported that it is a hamstring injury, but at this point in time, that's what it looks to be. So, big red flag to start training camp in pads. But let's get to the meat of practice. The team focused on red zone work in 11-on-11s today. They ran 31 plays, which makes sense for the first day in pads. You don't necessarily want people going full speed and risk injuries. I mean, you already have an injury with your best player covering probably your second best player out there. So it limits that a little bit with red zone work, but people still got hurt. But 31 plays, only 10 passes were attempted from all quarterbacks in those 11-on-11 team drills. They ran some bootlegs, which is pretty rare for a Josh McDaniels offense. There were some, but I don't remember many Tom Brady bootlegs over the years. So all this talk that we've heard in the last week that it's basically going to be the exact same offense there's some wrinkles. We're looking for the wrinkles. Here's one wrinkle. They're running some bootlegs, at least with Drake Maye out there. Maye went 5 of 6 passing today. Did throw 2 touchdown passes, no picks, which you always hope for in red zone team drills, but he's yet to throw an interception so far throughout training camp. Again, he should have had one that was dropped by Jabril Peppers on day 1, but in terms of, they don't really track QBR or passer rating in these things, but Drake Maye is very high, and it's very encouraging to see him actually taking care of the football so far in training camp. Now, when he gets out there in the regular season, full speed, the plays break down a little bit, he tries to make some hero plays. Does he go back into old bad habits? We'll have to see, but so far, so good. Josh McDaniels has really instilled in him, take the check down, take the profit, be safe out there, still make some explosive plays. He had a big one to Pop Douglas over the weekend where he rolled out of the pocket to his right, threw a 50-yard bomb downfield. That's still happening. There's still, I think, going to be some quarterback design runs, but Maye is taking care of the football and learning this offense very well so far. His 2 TD passes were to Antonio Gibson, the running back, in the flat, and one went to Jalen Polk on a play-action pass. So Jalen Polk back out there in action. Really didn't expect that today. Misses all the practices in shells and shorts. You would expect there to be more of a ramp-up period for Jalen Polk. He's been dealing with some muscle tightness issues. Nope, first day of pads, he's out there and scores a touchdown in the red zone on a play-action pass. So a good start there for Jalen Polk, who's really only had nothing but negative headlines so far throughout training camp. The quarterbacks as a whole went 8 of 10 with 3 touchdown passes. Again, 2 of those were from Drake Maye. Josh Dobbs went 2 of 2 with a touchdown pass, and then Ben Wooldridge went 2 of 3, no touchdown passes for him. But it does seem to be a real competition for that backup job with Wooldridge and Josh Dobbs. So going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But so far, so good with Drake Maye out there. There were still sacks with pads, but a lot less. Only 2, at least according to this report that I'm reading by Greg Bedard, only 2 sacks allowed during 11-on-11s. I guess there were some completions that Drake Maye made that could potentially be considered would-be sacks, but overall, the offensive line, they should look better with pads out there, and they did look better today with pads. Now, that doesn't mean they were better than the defense. They were still losing in the trenches quite consistently. They certainly did in one-on-ones, which I'll get to in a second, but there were sacks. And let's start there with Will Campbell. Very, very good today in team periods. He did get destroyed in one-on-ones, which again I'll get to in just a second, but in the actual football play, red zone play, 11-on-11s, Will Campbell held his own out there. And that's basically what we've heard all of camp. Like, he doesn't jump off the page at you. Tackles rarely ever do. But he's doing what you would expect from a rookie early first-round pick. Maybe third pick or fourth pick overall was a bit high for a tackle like Will Campbell, but the Patriots took the best guy available at a position of need. And he's performing there so far. We know there are some limitations in terms of his shoulder width and his arm length and all that stuff we've talked about, but when it actually comes down to the X's and O's, him playing real 11-on-11 football, Will Campbell has done an excellent job so far throughout training camp. Jared Wilson, who's been the talk of camp so far, he's the 3rd-round center/guard drafted out of the University of Georgia. He actually started at left guard today in 11-on-11s, which means Garrett Bradbury started at the center spot. His blocking is excellent. Really good in team periods. The only issue with Jared Wilson is that with him at the center spot, and he kind of went back and forth today, he's had a series of QB center exchanges leading to fumbles with both Josh Dobbs and Drake Maye. There was a snap juggled by Drake Maye just today, which certainly wasn't the first at camp with him and Wilson. And we're not really seeing that issue. I think there might have been one, but we're not really seeing that issue with Garrett Bradbury, who, in my opinion, is going to be an inferior center to Jared Wilson. He just needs to get down the fundamentals of, snapping the football, which is kind of important at that position. But Jared Wilson, He'll take a couple snaps starting at left guard. He'll move over to center. Bradbury will leave. They'll put in Cole Strange or one of the other guys, City So, who I guess had a pretty good practice at left guard. So he'll kind of go back and forth, but he's getting a lot of time with the starters, and they're still trying to figure out if he's going to be your starting left guard or your starting center. But I think it's safe to say at this point, from everything that we've heard about him, the coaching staff raving about Jared Wilson, hearing about how he's a very intelligent football player, can play multiple positions clearly, was able to pick up the Josh McDaniels offense at 2 positions immediately, he's going to win a starting job. I think that's going to happen. I really hope it's center because Garrett Bradbury was not very good at the center spot in Minnesota last year. Patriots picked him up because he was the best available in free agency. I would much rather have Jared Wilson, assuming he's able to work out these issues with the center QB exchanges. I think it's better you have him at center, and then you have Cole Strange, Layden Robinson, City So, whoever wins the job at the left guard spot, versus putting Wilson at left guard and then having a liability with Garrett Bradbury at center. Frankly, I'm not even sure if Garrett Bradbury is going to be much better than Ben Brown. Maybe I'm too low on the guy. Maybe he'll be better this season, but I'm going to be disappointed if we see Garrett Bradbury in that starting lineup. Now, it's not unusual. It's hard to tell if these center QB exchanges are Jared Wilson's fault, if they're Drake Maye or Josh Dobbs' fault. You know, last year, throughout minicamp, throughout training camp, Drake Maye had a lot of troubles with these exchanges, and we saw that this year in minicamp, and we're certainly seeing it throughout training camp, and last year they were able to figure it out, get it together. I think there were some in the preseason, but by the regular season, it was a rare occasion where the center and QB fumbled the snap, or fumbled the exchange. So Jared Wilson's a smart guy from everything we've heard. Hopefully he can figure that out and win that starting job, and then you take the best available at the left guard spot. But in terms of pass protection, in terms of run blocking, very, very good football player. I'm excited to see what Jared Wilson does. But as mentioned, this was a run-heavy day in the red zone. The offense handed the ball off 27 times in 11-on-11s. 12 of those plays were run stuffs by the defense. Not going to read too much into that. Is that a lot? Is that a little? I'm not sure. The defense kind of sees it coming. You know, if they only threw the ball 10 times and handed the ball off almost 30 times, the defense is going to expect a run more often than not. So, and that's part of the reason Jalen Polk was able to get a touchdown off of a play action. I think this is going to be a very run-heavy team, at least to start the season, and that's what they did today in the red zone. So 12 run stuffs from the defense on 27 carries from the offense. Travion Henderson, second-round rookie who we hope will have an immediate impact, had the most carries out there with the starters, 7 handoffs, did exchange a fumble with Josh Dobbs, so this is kind of an issue going all around. It's training camp. This stuff happens all the time. If it's happening in September, then we should be worried. But Travion Henderson overall was a solid day for him out of the backfield. He did put Marte Mapu on skates at one point. They also lined up Brock Lampy out there. He's the undrafted free agent the Patriots brought in from Northern Illinois to play fullback. So the fullback position is back. I'm kind of old school. I love that. I love that about the Josh McDaniels offense. You got an extra blocker out there, a guy who you can hand the ball off to on occasion in a rugby-style play. But you got Brock Lampy out there. So overall, if they were only stuffed 12 times on 27 carries and the defense saw it coming, I'm not going to worry about it too much. And certainly Antonio Gibson was the best running back on the roster last year. We all know what Ramondre Stevenson is capable of. And then you add Travion Henderson to the mix, who should eventually be your number one running back. But for now, he'll be a third down guy out of the backfield, and so far, so good there. As for the receivers, it continues to be Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte as the starters. And Saturday was a standout practice for Pop Douglas. Monday was Kayshon Boutte's moment. And if you're just going off of what I've read, what I've seen on film, and everything that's been going on in practice, Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte are outperforming Stephon Diggs. Now, is that just a ramp up for Diggs? Are they involving him less? Clearly, Maye's not throwing the football to him as much these last couple of practices, so I'm wondering if that's that's just a choice or if it's part of the Josh McDaniels offense, which emphasizes spreading it around, or, they're just limiting his load for the time being, saying, run your routes, but Drake Maye is going to throw the other guys because it is a real competition in this receiving room. But right now, Kayshon Boutte is really stepping up. Before Christian Gonzalez went down in 11-on-11s, he dusted Gonzo twice in one-on-one drills. Kayshon Boutte beating Christian Gonzalez in one-on-one drills. He's already considered a starter at this moment in time, but he keeps this up. It's going to guarantee a starting job for Kayshon Boutte, which I don't think any of us really expected. I know Boutte had a pretty good year too, really built a lot of chemistry with Drake Maye, but then you added Kyle Williams, who looks like he could be an impactful receiver as a rookie. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. We haven't seen that in New England in a while, but they also added Mac Hollins, and Kendrick Bourne is still there, and you have all the competition with Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, Efton Chisholm is in the mix there, and, might earn a roster spot just on special teams early on and then work his way into that receiving core. Didn't know if there'd be a spot for Kayshon Boutte, but right now he looks like the second best receiver on the field, and the first looks to be Pop Douglas. So that's really exciting to see. The Patriots might actually have a real receiving core out there. As I mentioned, Jalen Polk had a touchdown in the red zone on play action, but what we've seen is a ton of rotation with the starters among the receivers. Seems like every receiver, even Javon Baker and Efton Chisholm, seem to be getting some reps with either the first or second team. So it is a real competition, and they're going to have to work that out. And, they're not going to decide now. The training camp's obviously going to be a factor. The preseason's going to be a major factor on who makes this team and who doesn't. And, I think we all kind of wrote off Jalen Polk, but it was a surprise seeing him back out there today, and he had a good training camp last year. Will that translate to real games? If it does, and we see that in the preseason, then maybe there is a spot on this roster for Jalen Polk. But the one-on-ones is where things got really interesting today. Players put the pads on. It gets real physical. You got the two one-on-ones, you got the ones in the trenches, and then you get the ones with the receivers. So let's start with the receivers. I mentioned Boutte smoking Gonzalez twice in one-on-ones. One was a very Gronk-style catch, flashing his hands late to secure the ball. That's a veteran thing that receivers do. They run routes and do not let the corner have a read on them until the very last split second. I don't remember seeing that from Kayshon Boutte in the past. He's doing that now against one of the best DBs in the NFL. So impressive job for Kayshon Boutte today on one-on-ones. Stephon Diggs had a nice catch near the back pylon for a TD against Marcellus Dial. Now, Dial said it was out of bounds, a bit of an iffy play, but Diggs looked pretty good on one-on-ones today. Got away with a push-off on Marcus Jones, winning in the left flat, so I'm not sure he would get away with that in a real game, but overall, Diggs, I think he went 2 for 2 in those one-on-one drills. Kyle Duggar stripped the ball away from Hunter Henry seemingly after the catch, so kind of borderline between whether that was a fumble or just an incompletion. Henry also slipped in the left flat on another rep with Kyle Duggar, so not a very good day for Hunter Henry in the one-on-ones. Ramondre Stevenson juked Robert Spillane out of the backfield for a pitch and catch. He actually did this twice to Spillane in one-on-ones today, and Spillane has really been one of the standout players on defense. I'm really excited to see him out there. So if Ramondre Stevenson is beating him in one-on-ones out of the backfield, catching the ball, that's a good sign for Ramondre. We know he's slimmed down quite a bit. Mike Vrabel emphasizes speed, and that's something Ramondre really is working on this year. It's just being a little bit faster out there and being a better pass catcher out of the backfield. Antonio Gibson beat Christian Ellis on a touch pass to the corner of the end zone from Drake Maye. Also made a shifty move at one point, losing Christian Ellis on another rep. So Antonio Gibson's looking good. All the running backs are looking really good right now. And then Pop Douglas had a drop on one of his reps after getting past Marcellus Dial. But overall, I'm not worried about Hunter Henry having a bad day. Like, that's fine. It'll come together. It always does with Hunter Henry. But running backs, pretty good in terms of pass catching in these one-on-one drills. And the receivers have been a pleasant surprise so far. So that's really good to see. In the other one-on-ones, in the trenches, Will Campbell had one single rep, had a nice punch on Keon White, and then Keon White proceeded to throw him to the ground. I don't know if that clip's going around Twitter right now, but I'd like to see it. I heard about it immediately after it happened, tried to find the clip, but a lot of people panicking about Will Campbell. Then he comes in 11-on-11s and does a good job. So we know there are physical limitations with Campbell. He's probably not going to be great in one-on-ones, especially going up against a really good, incredibly athletic defensive player like Keon White. But when those two are up against each other in team drills, Will Campbell, for the most part, does a pretty good job, and he did an excellent job today. Garrett Bradbury, who, again, I'm not very high on, was beat by Kyrus Tonga, who is not known to be a great pass rusher, so a bit of a concern there. Jared Wilson absolutely dominated Jaquelin Roy in multiple reps, so Jared Wilson not only dominating in 11-on-11s, he's dominating in one-on-ones. Morgan Moses had a single rep. They're limiting his workload as a 34-year-old right tackle, but he held his own against Harold Landry out there. And then Caden Wallace, remember him? He was supposed to be the starting left tackle last year, barely played, ended up getting some reps at right tackle. Now they've given up on him entirely as a tackle, and he's playing the guard position. He continued to struggle today, was beat by Clavon Chasen in 11-on-11s. According to Greg Bedard, he was manhandled twice by defensive tackle Isaiah Aiton. I don't even know who that is, so not a great sign. Also had a blown block on a run by Travion Henderson, 11-on-11s. I think this is another draft bust pick at tackle, and even potentially at guard. When you draft a tackle in the early rounds and it doesn't work out, it usually works out at the guard position. That doesn't even seem to be happening with Caden Wallace. So, we hope 2025 was a successful draft. It's very encouraging so far from the Will Campbell selection. I think we're all optimistic about Kyle Williams, certainly optimistic about Travion Henderson, and Jared Wilson has been a real pleasant surprise out there. Looks to be a starter at center or left guard. But when you look at the previous draft, kind of an indictment on Elliott Wolf and what he's done. So, you got Stretch and Vrabel in there in the front office, working with Elliott Wolf, who's a bit of a pushover. I think that's the right combination, and if this does turn out to be a successful draft class, then we will know it was Elliott Wolf in the previous years, but it makes sense to keep him around if he does work well in tandem with Mike Vrabel and company. So last bit here, the kicker competition, which I really haven't talked about yet on the podcast. Remember the Patriots, they took a kicker in the 6th round of the draft, and anytime you take a kicker in the draft, he was actually the first kicker selected, the best available on the board, you expect them to be a starter. Well, so far it has been a real competition. John Parker Romo, who now just goes by Parker Romo, is 7 of 8 on field goals so far in training camp. Today he got all 5 of the field goal reps, and Andres Borregales, the guy they drafted in the 6th round, who now goes by Andy Borregales. I don't know what's going on in that kicker room, but they're changing lots of names there, so maybe these names will continue to change. Maybe it will just be Bori by the end of this. But Borregales didn't get any reps today. All of them went to Parker Romo. Maybe Borregales gets them all tomorrow, and Romo doesn't get any of them. I'm not really sure, but that just comes to show it is a real competition, and it should be because Borregales has not been good. As I mentioned, Parker Romo, 7 of 8 so far on field goals in training camp. Borregales is just 4 of 8, making 50% of his field goals. That's not what you want from a kicker that you take in the NFL draft that was the best available. Parker Romo might actually win this job, which is wild. And look, I've probably seen Parker Romo kick more than any Patriots fan out there. I used to work for the San Antonio Brahmas in their only season in the XFL before the merger with the USFL, and they became the UFL. And Parker Romo was the kicker. And he's got a good leg, got a good foot. He can kick from 50 plus. He can kick from 60 plus. That's not the issue. The issue with him seems to be the accuracy and the clutch gene. And I'll tell you why. Because last game of the XFL regular season, San Antonio Brahmas, they're down by either 2 or they're down by 3. I don't remember. They have a chance to either send it into overtime or even win it if it was a 2-point deficit. And they send Parker Romo out there for a 50-plus yard field goal indoors in the Alamo Dome. And basically, if he makes this kick, the San Antonio Brahmas, who were red hot at the time, didn't have a good record, but they were red hot at the time, they would have made the playoffs and potentially made a run and won the championship. Parker Romo missed it. I don't remember if it was wide left or wide right. I was only standing underneath it. And that ended the Brahma season. So I'm not sure the clutch gene is there for Romo. This is also just hearsay. I don't know the full details of it. But, again, I worked for this team, San Antonio Brahmas. There was some sort of scuffle with Parker Romo and some of his teammates on the bus when they were heading to one of the games. Obviously, there was no discipline. Parker Romo was still out there, earned an NFL tryout, and he might earn a starting job when all is said and done, but just something to think about going forward. This is a guy who most of us thought wouldn't make an NFL roster, and as of right now, he looks like your week 1 starter at the kicker spot. So that's less about Parker Romo and more about Andy Borregales, who is not who we thought he was. And, that was the concern with him, right? He's a kicker that grew up in the South, played for the University of Miami, is not used to the elements. I know it's been, 90 plus degrees at these training camp practices in Foxborough, but, if he's missing them now, what's it going to look like in December? 40-mile-hour winds, sleet and rain or snow. Maybe you just go with Parker Romo, and hope it works out. But at this point in time, if they're not confident in Borregales, and you're thinking about elevating Parker Romo as your starter, maybe you should start looking elsewhere and see if there's any kickers available that can be added to that competition, because this is a space to watch going forward. We don't talk about special teams a lot, and having a reliable kicker is very important, and I'm just going to say I'm not sure Parker Romo is going to be a reliable kicker. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. It'd be really great to see him succeed, but we all expected Borregales to be the guy week 1, and as of right now, he just hasn't showed up. So, interesting kicker competition. We'll see how it goes throughout the rest of training camp and the rest of the preseason. That's it for this episode of PatsCast. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, hit the notification bell, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Brad Whitaker. No podcast tomorrow, but we'll be back on Wednesday. See you then.